Okay, hello and welcome. My name is Gary Polinsky. I am one of the organizers for the St. Louis SQL Server and Business Intelligence User Group. Joining me today is our co-organizer, Julie Bloomquist. Say hi, Julie.
Hello.
And today we have a really fantastic presentation on Azure Data Factory. Leslie Andrews is going to be joining us on her busy tour schedule. She's she's actually a speaker at PASS, and I think she's speaking this Thursday at, if I'm right, 4:15 at the PASS Summit, virtual PASS Summit. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second about the PASS Summit. But let me just catch up on some other news. Next month, our user group will be Luke Newport will be here to talk about SQL Server 2022 new features that I believe that were just announced, released. I think it's in GA now. Is that right, Julie?
Yeah, it was just announced at Ignite.
At Ignite, great. So we're gonna get the latest news from on SQL Server 2022 from Luke next month. Data Saturdays and SQL Saturdays are still going on. Data Saturdays started up a while back, but became integral to our user group when PASS kind of was going through a transition. SQL Saturdays are also back. So here's a couple examples of those. Slovenia and 2 in Portugal. All over the world, there are these Data Saturdays. So check it out, datasaturdays.com. Julie, you know the website for SQL Saturdays? Is it sqlsaturdays.com, or do you check it? Okay. And then, so here's what's going on. PASS Summit is actually in progress. The pre-cons are occurring as we speak. If you haven't registered, by all means do register. This is a free to everyone, and registration gets you access to all of the recordings. So I'm just going to pop out to the website. And you can see it's official. Leslie Andrews is speaking at at PASS Summit. Here's her background. I'm logged into the PASS Summit website after registration, and I can see, that she's going to be speaking on what we're watching today, and you can look at all of the, for example, like themes and tracks. There's some amazing content as usual for PASS. Let's see.
Microsoft MVPs out the wazoo.
Yeah, these are some really seasoned experts, seasoned speakers who are also experts in their field. Really great content all over the, just in the analytics track. There's all sorts of things from data engineering, data analytics, Power BI.
It's Sunil's text and sentiment analysis. That looks like Sunil, yeah.
Yeah, it's Sunil and
Paul Turley doing Power BI paginated reports.
Yeah, some really great DevOps for Power BI, which is becoming more and more important as environments, Power BI environments mature within organizations.
Ginger Grant, Jamie, Matt.
You click add to schedule, and then you see down next to add to schedule, there's a little heart. If you heart the ones that you're adding to your schedule, and then if you notice that there's another one in the same time period, just do a heart. And then, Gary, if you want to go over to your My Schedule.
So I'll go back up to my
schedule. And then go up.
Oh, yeah.
Right there's a show favorites. So if you put a checkbox in there, it'll show you what you have scheduled, but it'll also show you if you have multiples for the same time period. So you can choose or change your mind, things like that. So don't forget the show favorites checkbox.
It allows you to flip back and forth, which I know when I attend a past summit, I'm physically like, I'll go to a session, one session, I'll go, oh no, this isn't a good match for me. And then I'm literally running to the next session. I guess one of the advantages of being virtual is that it's just a click away to change sessions. So as I mentioned, if you register, you get access to all the recordings. So be sure to go ahead and register. Upcoming job opportunities, Save a Lot, man. Rapidly building their data insights team with their engineering from data engineers. There's, I guess, the whole pipeline. There's a senior data engineer, two other data engineers, regular data engineers, an analytics engineer and a senior analytics engineer, which is essentially Power BI. They're mostly Microsoft with a little bit of legacy Tableau. And then they're building a data science department, a group. And that's really exciting. It's a really good team, good leadership in the team, and a good work environment. If you're interested, check out LinkedIn for more information. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to Leslie Andrews to talk with us about Azure Data Factory. Take it away, Leslie.
Awesome. All right, can you see my slide?
Yes.
Yes, great. Thanks for joining us today. We're going to be talking about Azure Data Factory. This is a beginner level session. We're just going to do a tour of the factory. We're going to start off with a little bit about me. I have about 20 years of experience in IT. I have worked in state government at the busiest courthouse here in Albuquerque, New Mexico, which is where I'm from. I've worked at the Albuquerque Police Department, built a data warehouse to put us in compliance with the settlement agreement the city has with the Department of Justice, because we used excessive force and there were a lot of requirements for collecting and reporting on data. And I built the initial system that was used to bring us into compliance with that. I am a speaker, obviously. I'm here. I have spoken at many SQL Saturdays back in the before times, and we got to actually go to them. I was an Idera Ace in 2019, and they helped sponsor some of my travels to go to those cool places. I am a certified data engineer and a data analyst through Microsoft. I currently work for 3 Cloud Solutions as part of the data and analytics consulting group. We were formerly Pragmatic Works, and they purchased us, and we are now part of the largest Azure-only consulting company in the country. We're a Microsoft Gold partner. We are hiring, and I have a slide at the end where you can get a link to our current openings. Today, we're going to do a brief overview of Azure Data Factory. We're going to understand what it is and what you use it for, how you set it up, and then a couple of demos that show moving some data around and how to create a table-driven process that allows you to be really configurable in creating your pipeline so that you can move data from a whole series of tables all in one. So first, we're going to start off with what is Azure Data Factory. It is a cloud-based ETL and data integration service that allows you to create data-driven workflows and orchestrate data movement and transformation at scale. And that's what's important there, is the at scale. So you can build out things that allow you to move a lot of data very quickly. It is a service that is managed and by Microsoft. So anytime you go out to the Data Factory, you've got the latest version because it's a browser-based system. And the processes are developed in a web browser. So you don't actually have to download anything onto your computer to do any of the development. At its basics, what it does is it moves data and it transforms data, and it does that using control activities. This is a sample of some of the source systems that you can connect to and move data to and from. Every new release, there's a new system that you can connect to. So like I said, this is just a small sample. And then you can take that data in and move it and put it into blob storage. You can put it into a SQL database. You can put it into a Synapse instance. But its main purpose is to collect the data, transform it, and move it. It does this by using certain processes, pipelines, and activities. So a pipeline is a logical grouping of activities that when you put them all together, perform a task. So a pipeline can contain a set of activities that ingest and clean log data, and then kick off a mapping data flow to analyze it. The pipeline lets you manage those activities as a set instead of doing each one individually. And you deploy and schedule the pipeline instead of each of those activities. So you need to think of it as kind of like an SSIS package. So we develop the pipeline with the activities in it, and that would be similar to the SSIS package that you would create. Linked services are like connection strings. So again, if you're familiar with SSIS, the connection strings are what you use to connect to flat files or databases or Excel or CSV, right? So in ADF terms, a linked service is the same as a connection string. And a data set is a named view of data that points or references the data that you want to use in your activities and your inputs and outputs. So each data set has a linked service that's connected to it, because you can't have the data without the linked service. So if you have a SQL server or a flat file linked service, you then have to create a data set that allows you to get to the data in that service. So here's kind of an overview of all of those pieces and how they go together. So an activity can have 0 or more input data sets, and it can produce 1 or more output data sets. And then the pipeline schedules, monitors, and manages those activities. Any questions? So the big piece of the Azure Data Factory is the integration runtime. And this is what actually does the work in the factory. So it executes the data flows, it dispatches activities, it can do an SSIS package execution, depending on what type of runtime it is. You get an automatic runtime when you create your data factory, and this is the auto-resolve integration runtime. You can also have a self-hosted runtime, which basically is your own virtual machine that does the integration runtime for you. So you would use one or the other. You would either use a self-hosted or the auto-resolve, and I believe now it's called Azure integration runtime. So you would pick one of those two to run. You would use the Azure SSIS when you're doing lift and shift, when you have a whole bunch of SSIS packages that you want to run natively in the cloud. You can use an Azure SSIS integration runtime. So if you'll notice, there's a link down here at the bottom that says why you shouldn't use auto-resolve integration runtime in Azure Data Factory or Synapse. The last time I did this presentation, I noticed that when I was doing my demos, it took a long time for them to actually start. They were in queued status for presentation, a long time, singing the Jeopardy song. And so I was like, man, I really need to make sure that I fix that and I make it faster. Except I found I couldn't. And this article explains some of the limitations of using the Azure integration runtime, the auto resolve, and why you shouldn't do that, because it can make things run slower. It has other things that it has to do to make sure that there's enough processing power for what you're trying to do. And if it's in different regions, then it has to go across. So there are a whole lot of considerations into whether or not you should do that. For a demo, if we have to twiddle our thumbs and sing the Jeopardy song a little bit, okay, we'll do that, because this is costing me money to run it, because this is all about performance and being able to do things. So we're going low grade for these demos. So if we have queued status for a while, that's why, because the auto resolve integration runtime does lots of stuff to minimize its processing and make sure that you're not spending too much. So this is a very important piece of what we're doing. You use the Azure integration runtime when you are copying data between cloud stores, or transforming data using data flows, or executing activity using cloud stores and services. So if you're using all cloud stuff, you would use the auto resolve or the self-hosted. You would have to use the self-hosted if you're trying to move data from cloud and on-prem. If you've got a hybrid environment, or you're trying to move data from an on-prem SQL Server to Synapse in the cloud, right, you have to use a self-hosted for that. You can only use the Azure, the auto resolve, if you're doing cloud to cloud. And then you, like I said, you use the Azure SSIS when you want to execute your SSIS packages through the data factory. So we're going to move into the demos here in a minute. That's basically all we need to know about the terminology and the parts and the pieces of Azure Data Factory. In my demo, I have a couple of different things. I have the Stack Overflow 2010 database on SQL Server. I have a blob storage account where I'm moving data. And then the Synapse Stack Overflow data warehouse, which is where the data would get moved to and transformed and pushed out for any analysis to happen. The demos that we have will be moving the data from the SQL Server to the blob storage, from the blob storage into Synapse. And then the second one, we have a configuration table that shows how you can bring this up to scale and do multiple tables with lots of different configurations and parameterize the process. So I'm going to switch over to my demo here. If you don't, you have to have a Azure account set up with access to the portal, right? So we've got the Azure portal. You have to have the portal in order to create a data factory or have any of the resources. The first thing we're going to do here is look at the Azure Data Factory. So when we create a resource, data factory, we tell it that we want to create the data factory. We have to have a subscription and a resource group. You can either use an existing or create a new one. You have to tell it what instance, the name that you want to have, and the version. You can only, you can still select a version 1, but you shouldn't. You should just do v2. The next thing that it's important to know is for work in process or progress, you have to have Azure DevOps or GitHub set up if you want to be able to make changes to your pipeline and save them without publishing them. So to actually run a pipeline, it has to be published. And when you run it, it runs the last published version. If you don't have your Git configuration set up, the only way that you can save any of your changes is to publish them. So everything has to be in a complete and ready status every time. By having the GitHub or the Azure DevOps repository set up, that allows you to have a master branch, which is your published branch, and then you can create your own Leslie's working branch, and I can go in and I can tweak stuff and I can save stuff, and it's only going to be in my working branch until I merge to the master. And then when you publish, it publishes from the master, and then you run it. Because we're not going to be doing any saving or setting any of that up. We're gonna hit the configure git later. But it's really important to understand that if you don't set that up, you can't save stuff in progress. It's always this is ready, I'm going to publish it, and it's got to be in a runnable condition. So you can't have any errors or anything. Networking, we're just going to do the defaults on this. You can enable the managed virtual network. So this is, again, the auto resolve integration runtime provisioned on demand. So if we've disabled this, you can choose to use the explicitly created inside the managed network. So this is setting up some of that configuration for the Azure runtime. And then whether or not you want your self-hosted integration runtime connectivity to be public or private. We're just going to leave that to be public. Encryption, we're not going to set up any encryption for this. This customer managed key allows you to, like, as a contractor or a consultant, to be able to use a customer's keys in their vault to connect. And as long as the storage account and the key vault are in the same region, and that helps in turning stuff over to a client, not being able to access it after a limited time period, just gives your customers, your clients, some security time boxing for access. And then tags, almost everything in Azure can be tagged with, if this is a specific data factory that you're creating for your finance group and you want to be able to track all of the billing that comes out of it, you could, tag this with, billing type finance. And then every time something comes up, you can search for that and that's tagged, and you can do reporting at a grouping level for any resource that you create. And it's going to get mad at us because I haven't given it a name. But once you have this all set up and everything is good and you say create, it's going to take you to this screen. So now we've created a data factory. This one is my ADF 3 Cloud data factory. This is the monitoring and management system for the data factory. So if we come in here, we can see our activity logs, we can see any tags that we set up, we can change our networking. We have some videos on the documentation on the data factory. We can see activity, all of the metrics for the processes that we've run. We can set up alerts, logs, diagnostic settings, pretty much everything that you can do on any other Azure cloud service, we can do here. We can add diagnostic settings, activity log, we can select specific subscriptions depending on how many factories you have. So it's, a lot goes into this and allowing you to see how well your factory is actually running. But this doesn't have anything like what I was talking about, no pipelines or activities. Well, that's because, like I said, this is the monitoring tool. This is just where we go to see how our factory is running. We actually have to select this Open Azure Data Factory Studio to get to the actual authoring tool, the IDE, where we're going to build our pipelines, we're going to create our linked services, and build all of the pieces that we need to get our data factory running. So you can see as we come in here, the first thing it tells us is that it allows us to configure a Git repository. And it wants us to do that because, again, we can't save unless we do. So it will remind us of that every time. One of the things I really like about just Azure in general is they are so prolific with tutorials, videos, community content, things that you can use to learn all of the things that you can do with this tool. And all of these tutorials and videos are free. You can just go out there and find cool stuff. The browse partners and pipeline templates. Again, these are work that other people have done that you can go and look at to see techniques or advanced processing that we're not going to cover today, like setting variables and some advanced while loops and types of things, and data flows. So if you want to learn more than just the basics, there's plenty out there to learn. So the authoring tool is where we actually go to build our pipelines and our data sets. But we're going to actually start here in the monitoring because this, or I'm sorry, in the manage, because this is where we have to go to create our linked services. Like I said before, these are our connection strings. We really can't do anything in the authoring with the data sets and the pipelines until we have some linked services. So if we want to add a new linked service, here are, again, some of the samples for things that you can connect to. So we've got Azure Key Vault, SQL databases, Dynamics 365. If you're doing stuff with SAP, we have SAP for HANA, Salesforce connectors, Spark, Teradata. I mean, pretty much anything that you want to connect to, there's probably a connector out here for, and if there's not, it'll be here soon. We have different files, FTP, file systems, Google Cloud storage, Amazon storage. So, and once you pick a system that you want to connect to, then it's going to ask you how you want to, here, we're going to turn this on real quick. That's not what I wanted to do. Stop. So what I just did was I enabled interactive authoring on the integration runtime. And that allows us to do things like test our connections. And when we are in a data set, be able to like view the data. So be able to connect to our data set, run that connection, run the query, and be able to get back. So if we were going to connect to an Amazon S3 service, we would have to have our authentication type, an access key, or we can use temporary security credentials. We can either manually enter our access key, or we can use a linked Azure Key Vault, which I don't have set up, but if we did, we can connect the connection to the actual service or to a file path. We can add parameters to it if we wanted to be able to connect to a specific location. Discard our changes. We're going to come over here to our, so it told us that our interactive authoring has been started. So here's our auto-resolve integration runtime. We can see that it's an Azure IR, which is what I was saying it's now called. If we wanted to add a new one, again, we have our choices between our own self-hosted, which allows us to do cloud to cloud or cloud to on-prem, or the SSIS. We're just going to keep running our regular one. There is a new connection here to Purview. If you haven't heard about Purview, it is Azure's data management tool. And it's really kind of cool. It allows you to show data lineage, and it can actually connect to the data factories and bring in all of your transformations into Purview for you. It's really cool. If we're going to set up our Git configuration later, here's where we would come to do that in the Manage section. ARM templates are how you import and export data factories. So if you've gone in and you've created it, and for whatever reason you need to shut down the resource group that it's in, but you want to save this data factory, you can come in here, you can export that ARM template, and then you can go into a new factory and re-import it. And that way you don't lose all of the work that you've done. Triggers are how you want to execute a pipeline, if you want to schedule them. We can set up global parameters. So if you are using this in an enterprise level application and you want to be able to always use the same server names, or you have different environments. So for your prod and your dev, you could set up those global parameters and pass those in. Here we can set up the customer managed key if we need to do that after the fact. Credentials is in preview. It's always nice to see that things that you can expect to maybe change in the future. So the next time you come in here, this may look different. And that's the thing with preview. It's not until things go into general use that you can be pretty much guaranteed it's gonna stay a little bit. And then managed endpoints allow you to connect to a private IP address. So all that's done in the manage. The monitor allows you to see pipeline runs that you've done either manually or triggered. And now we're going to actually get to the factory where we're going to see the stuff that we've been talking about. So here are the data sets that we've created and the pipelines. So this first demo is very simple: copy data. If you're clicked on this main working area here, that gives you the pipeline level information. So we have parameters, variables, settings, and outputs. In the concurrency, the setting, this is the maximum number of simultaneous pipelines. So if you had a pipeline that you're calling multiple times, if your concurrency is only set to 1, you're only going to be allowed to run at one time. So the concurrency is what allows you to run in concurrently multiple runs of the same pipeline and be able to scale up and be able to do that. So if you think, gosh, why am I only getting like 5 pipelines and I've got 5,000 of them to do? It's going to take me forever to do this 1,000 times. This concurrency is a place where you can come and you can up it to 10. So maybe it'll run 50 of them at a time instead of 5. This particular pipeline has some parameters for the table name, the container name, the directory name, the file, the schema, and the field select list. I'm actually passing those in with default values here. But when we actually click on the copy data activity, we can see that it has a source. So this is the LACE Stack Overflow. We can preview the data. We tell it we want the users from DBO, and we want all the fields in there. And it's going to run this and preview the data. So this is the Stack Overflow users. So we have our account ID, reputation, downvotes, their about me little blurb. It's getting the query that it's running from those pipeline parameters that we've passed in. So I told it that I wanted it to go get that field select list and the schema name and the table name. The sync, I've told it is a Parquet sync. I've given it the container name, the directory name, and the file name. And it's going to come out here to this blob storage that I've set up and put those files out there. Now you might think, well, I thought we said we were going to move stuff from database to database. Every single data factory job that I have processed and worked on has gone to blob storage. I don't know why we have to move it, but every single one of them puts it in blob storage as a text file and then processes that text file in a subsequent job. So while you might think putting it in a blob storage really isn't going to be that useful, I'm telling you, every single job I've done, I've had to put it in blob storage. So getting a introduction to blob storage and how that works and where to go to do that is always good. This is the Storage Explorer preview. I have my blob containers out here. Blob containers are kind of weird. You know, this had a file in it or a folder with files, and when I deleted the files, the folder goes away. So it won't keep an empty folder in your blob storage. But when I run my job, it'll create the folder and then put the files in there. So if you haven't ever gotten out and worked with Storage Explorer or built a blob container, you're going to want to do that, because that's something that as our data expands and the things that we have to do as data engineers has grown from being just about building the tables and building the databases. Now we have to know things about blob storage. We have to know where to go to set that up. We have to know about security and key vaults and how you integrate in a new key so that it can connect to the blob. And so let me show you. So here, where is it? Keys, where's my keys? Here we go, access keys. You have to go in and get this key or set it up through the Azure Secure or the Key Vault, right? But this key, let's see, can I, oh, no. Can we view, I want to see the key. Oh, there we go, show keys. So it's this huge long thing. And when I created my linked service in my Azure Data Factory, I had to know this key to put in to linked services, blob storage. Here's my storage account key. I mean, it only looks like it's 10 things, but it's not. It's this big old long key right here. And that's what gives my factory access to that blob storage. So we didn't think we had to know about blob storage, but we have to know about blob storage. Any questions about that? All right, so we're going to do add trigger now. So it tells us right here, trigger pipeline now used in last published configurations. If I came over here and changed this parameters to badges, which would work because, you know, that's a thing. See, it wants me to publish all, and that would get me badges. If I don't publish it and I just trigger now, it's going to get me users because that was the last published configuration. So it's running our pipeline. We would expect that in our DPS 2021 container, we're going to get a directory called daily extract, and it's going to put a file named test out there. Come back over here. Go back over to our storage. Oh, no, not that. Go. So there's two ways to get to this storage browser. There's the preview here, which shows it to you in the window, or there is a download that you can get that you can actually download to your computer and let you manage the Storage Explorer there. So we're going to go to DPS 20. Oh, first we're going to make sure that our pipeline finished. Going to discard that change. We're going to come over here and monitor. Ooh, view pipeline run, it finished. So it told us that it succeeded. We can click on the glasses here and it will show us that it read 29,398 records from the Azure SQL database in my West 2 region, and it moved it to my blob storage. It wrote the same number of rows that it read, but it compressed it, right? It's a whole lot smaller now. We had 50 megs of data, but it put it into just about 20. So if we come back over here and refresh, oh, come on, where'd you go? Did it go to demo container, maybe? Nope. Oh, there it is. I was going to say I was going to be really sad. I thought I did all the proper demo god. So yeah, 11.9, 11.44, we have a test file that is in Parquet. So if we wanted to, we could now use this as a external table in SQL Server. Not sure which versions of it support that, but we can go into SQL Server Management Studio, do an external table, point it at this file, and then select from it just like you would a regular table, which is pretty slick. If you haven't done Parquet tables, Parquet files to tables, that's pretty cool. But there we go. We got data out of our SQL Server into our blob storage. We could come down here and where it's a pipeline runs. So now we can see in our history that that was the pipeline that we ran. We can click on this and it will show us the parameters that got passed through. Any questions about that? Okay. So our next step is to import from that file to a staging table. Again, this is just a copy activity. And before we move on, I'm going to come over here and look at some of the activities that we do have. The most used one, of course, is going to be your copy data, but there's also a data flow activity. Data flows are when you take your data sets and do the merging, like SSIS, where you could take two data flows and union them together, or create a computed column, or handle flows differently with different pieces of data based on conditions. That's all done in data flows and data factory. And it's a little bit outside of the scope of this because it is a little more complex. But if you're looking to do those types of data wrangling, right? Putting those data sets together, creating your own set of data that you want to move into your own flow. That's where you do that. And then here's how you use those. So you create the data flows, and then you use that data flow in your pipeline here. We can use Azure functions. You can call Databricks notebooks. We can do some analytics with USQL. General is where most of the other big used ones are, right? So appending a variable, executing an SSIS, executing another pipeline. So you want to loop in through different pipelines based on passing parameters through. So you could put this pipeline in a pipeline. You could set variables, you can do lookups. There are some iterations and conditions. So you can filter, you can do for each and ifs. You cannot nest the ifs though. So you can't do an if and an if and an if. It is kind of limited there. And then some cool machine learning. If you've got that set up, you can do those processing here, and then Power Query. So those are all of the activities that are currently available to call from your data factory. This again is another copy activity, and it's moving it from that Parquet sync that we just created, so from the blob storage out to the Stack Overflow Synapse data set. So like I said, we've got the Stack Overflow source data, and then the blob storage, and then the Synapse Azure data warehouse that we're moving it into. We're just using a straight copy command. We can set up mappings so that in case your fields don't have the same names, you can set up mapping so that it knows where those are. We can increase the number of data integration units. This is how fast it's going to run, and the higher you go, the higher it's going to cost. So now we're going to we're going to add our trigger, and we're going to trigger this now. And I'm going to pop over to SQL Server Management Studio. And I expected to have a test table there. Let's go back. Here, sync. Schema name, table name, that's what I thought. Oh, cute. So remember I told you sometimes it takes a minute? This is what I was talking about. You think, oh, it's just gonna snap, it's done. Nope. Oh, see in progress. Okay. So now we could come and we could see it thinking about it. Ooh, it failed. String or binary data would be truncated. Well, that's sad. I think it's because I don't have that test table. Let's see. Pipeline runs. Look at our parameters. Oh, nope. Users. Staging users. Okay. Staging users. I wonder why it didn't like that. Oh, is it? All right. So we're going to move on because we're on a time schedule here. I think the reason that it failed is because this about me, you can only have a 4,000 byte field for in Synapse. And I don't think that when I did the pipeline, I truncated the field. So this is the file that we used, was this test file. And I didn't in my source say, I just said select asterisk. And because that field is too long in the source system, it's going to truncate it. So it doesn't want to do that. Let's see, is this one using the same? So this one's using a stored procedure, but I bet, let's go look at that real quick. I guess I missed one of the demo god sacrifices. Stored procedures. See, yeah. This one is a very straightforward. There's not really any transformations going on. It's just doing a insert into the data warehouse table name, select asterisk from staging table name. So if we're going to do this. Let's come back over here and we're going to add a trigger. We're going to trigger it now. We're going to change this to badges. So now our test file will have the badge data in it. And then if we come over here when that's done and add the trigger and change this to badges, then that should work. We'll see. Queuing again. Oh, come on. Now we're past the Jeopardy song even. Oh, there we go. In progress. Should get an updated time here. Refresh. Okay, so we did. We got a new file out there. And now if we get this out of the way, go away. Hello. All right, so now we're going to run our second one again. Run this. Call this badges. Okay. So while that's running real quick, debug lets you run any changes that you've made locally. So if you are working in a shared environment or you're not ready to publish yet, you just want to test and see if your changes are working, you can use the debug, and that actually runs it locally and lets you test it. Now, it does run things in sequential order rather than parallel processing because it is using local resources at that point and isn't published and running in the cloud. But this is a way that you, if you don't have a GitHub or an Azure DevOps repository set up and you're working on something and you don't want to publish it, but you need to test it, this is where you would go to do that. It was in the debug. So let's see. Oh, see step 2. Oh, it's still in progress. Yay, it succeeded. Refresh this. So it succeeded because we redid a table that it didn't get mad about with the truncated text. So now we have our data loaded into our staging table. And now we can run our third step, which is that stored procedure. So like I said, we just have a stored procedure here that loads from the staging to the DW. We're going to pass in the table name as our parameter. So if we add this trigger and trigger now, I'm going to change this to badges. And now it's just going to run out and run that stored procedure, which is basically moving the data from the staging table to the DW. So we have DW badges. It's got nothing there. But when our factory finishes, step 3 is in progress. La, la, la. Oh, see, it lied. It's not really in progress. It says it's in progress over there, but it's still queued over here. Okay, there we go. Succeeded. From badges, and it's moved all of our data from staging into the data warehouse table. All right, any questions about that? Cool. All right, I'm going to go ahead and truncate that again. So the next thing that I want to show you is using a configuration table to drive what you want your data factory to do. So basically going to do the exact same thing that we were doing. We're going to go out to the Stack Overflow source system. We're going to run through all of these tables. We're going to fill in our staging tables with all of those, the data. and then put it into a blob storage and set it up so that it's an incremental load. So a lot of times when we're working with a data warehouse, we don't need a full load. We just need what changed since the last time we ran it. And so what a configuration table like this allows you to do is set up those things that are important for your organization to drive an incremental load change. There are a couple of different ways that you can do that, right? So I have a field here called is incremental. And in the pipeline, there's a conditional statement. If it's incremental, do this. If it's not, do this. That way I can do different queries, because on this one, I only want where the creation date is after 12/10 or 12/31/2010. Like I said, on the user table, that about me needs to be truncated, right? So, and I've created a field select list as part of my configuration, because on all the other tables, I want to get all of the fields. But on that one table, I need to do that left about me 4,000. I need to truncate that so that it's not going to give me an error when I do my load for the user table. I've given it my table name and the schemas. Maybe you have different source schemas, staging schemas, and data warehouse schemas, right? And you want to be able to parameterize that for all of your tables. So you have 100 tables and 4 different schemas, right? You can build one configuration table that allows you to build a single pipeline that will process and load all of those tables for you. Let's see what else. I've got the container name, the directory name. If it is an incremental load, what field am I going to do that criteria on, and the date. So I'm actually gonna update this. Oh, you know what? That's not what I wanted to do after all. There was no where clause there. Let's see, let's fix that real quick. We want to set the watermark date back to null where incremental fields null. All right. So that's all good now. You'll notice I have one table here where is active equals 0. So this table isn't going to load. This is the posts table. There's a whole bunch of posts in the Stack Overflow database, as you might imagine, and it takes a little while to actually load that one. So this is here mostly so that we can see that it doesn't load the posts table, because we told it that we don't want to do that. So here, those are the basics for the configuration table that we've created. When we come back over here and look at our second demo, I have a process here called the orchestrator. And what it's going to do is it's going to get a list of the tables to process. So we're going to use a lookup, and a lookup lets us get a data set with fields and then use that information as the parameters or values that are coming in our loop. So we have a query that fills this in. We're going to get from that table listing where active equals 1. So we're not going to get the posts table to run through. And then for each of the tables, so we come over here and we tell it in our activity of a get list of tables to process, there's an output and a dot value. I will say one of the hardest things about working with Data Factory is learning this dynamic content syntax. There really isn't a good place to get documentation on what things are available and how to use them. And if I wish anything for Microsoft to do, it would be to work on this a little bit so that it's a little easier to get these dynamic content and know what's available to use and how to use it. But for this particular case, we're going to get that output value. And for each one of those output values, because that's our item in the for each here, we're going to do 4 activities. We're going to execute step 1 pipeline, which is this one, a new one, because I want to do the incremental extract. Then we're going to do step 2, which is the one we were doing before, the import the file from staging. So I'm reusing these pipelines in this orchestrator, and then execute step 3. And then if it's an incremental table, then I want to update that watermark date to be the latest date that it found. So on this execute step 1, this is our new one, the incremental load, our source is a little different. So here what I'm doing is, if the incremental is true, then I want to concatenate on, concatenate on the where clause, where the incremental field as a date is greater than the watermark date. So I'm getting all of the values from the pipeline that's passed through. I get the field select list. So on the user one, I'll get the one with the truncated fields. All the rest will get asterisked. And for each one of my tables, it's going to run this query, and it's going to create the files and put it out there in our blob storage. So we're going to go ahead and trigger this now. There are no parameters coming in because it gets them all from our table. Our table is the one that, the configuration table is the one that's driving what we're doing. So we can see here now that it's getting the list of tables to process. It found all of our tables. So for each table, we're going to do execute list 1. We can come in here, we can see the information that it's running. So this is for the users table. Here's the field select list that it's going to use, our watermark date. This one is the comments table. And then we can see the output. If we wanted to go to that pipeline, we could see once it's not cute anymore. There we go, in progress. So there were 8 rows, right? That was pretty fast. No. You could also filter out the pipelines. So if you just want to see one, we could come in, we can see it's still a couple of these, it's still working on executing step 1, but the other ones it's moved on to step 2. So if we come over to our SQL Server Management Studio, oh, nope, haven't gotten that far yet. That's right, where step 2 is getting it to the blob storage. Really? Oh, there we go. Created all of our files here. Oops, see, and we've got an incremental table. So this was for one of them that succeeded. Oops, so we can see that it finished this one because it updated the date to 12/31. Still got some pipeline twos going on. Moving along though. Oh, see, we got some data here. We could see that we have all of the data in our staging tables. Oh, man. Always. We could also look and see that if we look in posts, we got nothing. Because like I said, that was a big one. We didn't want that one. Posts got nothing. Fresh. Succeeded. Yay, beginning to end. Shows you how long. We can look and see what any parameters, if we had any. We needed to go out and check on our integration runtime. We can find it by our run ID and our pipeline IDs to do any troubleshooting if there were problems or if it didn't run fast enough. This will tell you information about how many activities you ran, how much movement there was, pricing calculator. This will let you rerun it. Cool. All right. So those were our 3 demos. We moved some data from our SQL Server to blob storage, from blob storage into Synapse, and then we took those same pipelines and reused them with a configuration table to drive a much bigger process that moved and developed all of those tables. You can also, I don't have it set up right now, but you can set this up so that if you need to have each day's, right, you can add a day to the end of it so that you can group all of your tables. So you want all of the tables from a certain day. You can have a daily extract and put a date field at the end of it so that if you have to rerun for some reason, all of the data that you needed for that one day to rerun is all in a single location. And all you have to do is you don't have to retrigger the extract, you just have to retrigger the processing. So are there any questions? Go ahead and unmute and we can chat. I think we have, what, 10, 15 more minutes?
So this is Gio. I have a question. I did
Sure.
miss the last 15 minutes, so sorry if you already covered this. But when the pipeline failed earlier, is there a way for ADF to send an email to developers or managers in case of failures?
There is a way to set up notifications and alerts. Yes, I have not personally done that, but it is part of the right alerts. So I am pretty sure that you can configure an alert that if a pipeline fails, it can send something. Absolutely.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you again for coming. Like I said, we are hiring at 3Cloud. We have a lot of open positions from data engineering to Synapse to Power BI, across the board. We're looking for people. So if you're looking for a job, feel free to scan my QR code and go out and check out our list of jobs. You can follow me on Twitter or LinkedIn, L Andrews 5807. pretty active, posting pictures of, sunsets and balloons and my grandkids occasionally. Sometimes I tweet something technical. And I appreciate y'all inviting me to come today. I needed the practice because I got to do this again on Thursday.
Thank you for coming out, Leslie, and joining us today. It was really great. It was really interesting. I think the reusability and the configuration table were especially interesting to me. Really looks at that it allows for scalability and in a different way than and I also have to compliment you, Grace under pressure. Uh, when during that failure, the data demo gods are smiling down upon you at your ability to pivot and find a way to make it work.
Yeah. Thank you.
And good luck with and enjoy your time at Pass.
Thank you. Thank you. I will. I'm excited.
Thanks again for coming out, and thank everybody for joining us today. We'll be sending out a notification for the next month's meeting, and keep an eye out for that.
Thank you, Leslie. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Y'all have a great day.
Thanks.
Bye.